Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating: how our deeply rooted philosophical views of the Earth literally shape the physical reality of our cities, our communities, and honestly, our entire response to the modern climate crisis. We often think of urban planning or environmental policy as just pure science or economics. But the truth? The blueprints of our modern world are actually drawn with the ink of ancient philosophies.
So I want you to think about the space you're sitting in right now. Really take a look around. Is it just a physical box made of matter? Just timber, concrete, and drywall? Or does it hold a deeper cultural, spiritual, and relational meaning? Well, how you answer that question might just depend on whether you're looking through a traditional Western lens or an Eastern one. Let's dive in.
Here's our agenda for today. We'll start by decoding the earthly realm, then explore Eastern holistic views, followed by Western philosophical views. After that, we'll compare the East and West head-to-head, look at modern revitalization and convergence, and finally, wrap up with future implications and climate.
All right, Section 1, Decoding the Earthly Realm. What exactly is Jiguang?
At the heart of this entire discussion is a really fascinating concept, Jiguan, which translates to the view of Earth. In traditional Eastern thought, the Earth goes way beyond just dirt, geography, or, prime real estate. It's actually viewed as a living, social, and cultural entity. It operates in this totally integrated way across national administration, rituals, religion, and just daily life. Jiguan is literally defined as the point of contact where the sky, nature, humans, and the divine all meet and interact. It's the whole shebang. Moving right along to Section 2, Eastern Holistic Views. This is all about the harmony of nature, humans, and gods. So, the Eastern paradigm is deeply rooted in what's known as the Chonji Sangyang Shin worldview. That basically translates to sincerity, reverence, and faith in heaven and earth. This view sees heaven, earth, humans, and gods as deeply, organically interconnected. It's a completely holistic system centered on one thing: harmony. Rather than looking at a vacant plot of land and asking, hey, how many buildings can we cram in here? This view emphasizes the natural flow of divinity and energy, what you might know as qi, that's inherent in all species. Think of it like a giant, living, breathing ecosystem where every single rock, tree, and person plays an equal, active role. And this holistic view, it wasn't just some abstract, lofty philosophy debated by scholars in a tower. It was the literal blueprint for society. The concepts of heaven and earth were actively reflected in everything: state rituals, the meticulous layout of capital cities and palaces, and the everyday ruling acts of kings, right down to local folk rituals. Literally everything was connected.
We can actually track how this philosophy physically manifested throughout history. Take ancient China, for example. King Wu's massive flood control and land zoning projects were just breathtaking in scale. And they weren't just standard engineering feats. They were designed specifically to reflect the monumental harmony of heaven and earth. Then, moving over to the Korean peninsula from the Three Kingdoms period all the way through the Joseon dynasties, sprawling urban planning and royal rituals were heavily based on feng shui and the theory of auspicious sites. And fast forward to today, we're seeing incredible modern restoration attempts that reinterpret these traditional spaces, blending our modern everyday needs with this ancient concept of Jiguan.
Now let's flip the coin. Section 3, Western Philosophical Views. We're looking at dualism, independence, and geometry. In the West, the foundational philosophy of space was heavily influenced by thinkers like René Descartes. You've probably heard his famous line, "I think, therefore I am." Well, Descartes introduced this dualistic separation of mind and matter. This created a subject-object-centered view, where humans are the active subjects, and the space around us is basically just a passive object to be observed or utilized. Meanwhile, you have Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who developed monadology, which focuses on the independence and self-sufficiency of individual entities. In this view, space becomes much more fragmented and material. So instead of a deeply connected web, imagine space as a collection of isolated islands, each just operating entirely on its own. Over time, this specific mindset physically built the cities we know today. Back in the ancient era of Greece and Rome, we see temples and cities designed with a strict, rigid geometric order. Fast forward to the postmodern era, and urban planning becomes almost entirely focused on functionality, efficiency, and the instrumental use of nature. Nature basically just becomes a resource to be managed and extracted. But here's the catch. In our current modern era, we're actually starting to see a desperate, crucial shift in environmental philosophy. It's essentially an all-hands-on-deck effort to restore sustainability and rediscover a genuine sense of place that we've kind of lost along the way. Which brings us to Section 4, Comparing East and West. Let's do a quick head-to-head analysis. Here is the crucial contrast, laid out side by side. The East's philosophical basis is this holistic worldview based on yin-yang and the 5 phases, which leads to a spatial awareness where a place is deeply relational and just full of intrinsic meaning. The West, conversely, driven by Descartes' dualism and Leibniz's individualism, views space primarily as a material object, understood through material scientific knowledge. To put it simply, it's the profound difference between seeing a forest as a vibrant community of living, interconnected beings versus seeing it as just a standing inventory of timber waiting to be chopped down. All right, Section 5, Modern Revitalization and Convergence. This is where we talk about fusing efficiency and harmony. Today, we're experiencing what you might call a self-generating revitalization. We're taking that ancient Eastern holistic perspective of Chunji Sangyang Shin and applying it directly to our modern concrete jungles. We're actually seeing ecological urban space planning that actively incorporates traditional knowledge to revitalize communities. It's a real game changer. Environmental policies are no longer just about basic resource management. They're shifting to emphasize the actual coexistence and dynamic living interaction between nature and humans. Modern urban planners, architects, and policymakers have kind of had this collective realization that we simply can't rely on just one philosophy anymore. They're actively searching for a completely new spatial culture. The ultimate goal here is to perfectly marry Western functional efficiency, our ability to build tall, strong, and efficiently, with Eastern harmonious integration, which is our ability to build spaces that nurture the human spirit and fiercely respect the natural flow of the earth. And finally, Section 6, Future Implications and Climate. How are we responding to modern crises? Look, we are facing unprecedented modern crises right now, and this combined approach offers an incredibly powerful new paradigm. By utilizing a holistic worldview of heaven and earth, that Jiguan perspective we discussed earlier, we can cultivate a much deeper, far more personal awareness of the global climate crisis. It isn't just about saving trees anymore, it also presents a desperately needed framework for integrating our increasingly fractured, yet technologically hyper-connected society. Integrating these traditional land management concepts into modern policy is absolutely key. By viewing the Earth not just as a material resource to be used and discarded, but as a relational system that we are deeply inherently a part of, we can generate far more effective and sustainable solutions to the complex ecological challenges we face today. We literally have to design spaces that remember the sacredness of the ground they're built upon. I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. The next time you walk out your front door, I want you to try shifting your perspective. If you start viewing your own community, your own city, as an integrated living space, a true meeting point of humanity and nature, rather than just physical geography on a map, how might that transform your own daily actions? How might it change your own role in fighting for its future? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it's fundamentally shifted the way you view the space around you.